Welcome to our panel discussion that we have been waiting for. I'm very positive that your waiting wasn't in vain, because we're going to have a very exciting discussion now. Let me not take much of your time, Nomsa. I will hand over to you. Nomsa is going to lead the discussion that is about to start. I think those who were here earlier have seen Nomsa presenting. She's the chief commercial officer, yes, at Amathuba AI. So, Nomsa, I will hand over to you and in the panel.
Thank you very much, Zenzele, and I would like to welcome my panel. And I must say that it's been such an amazing day to see all the technology that is there and the brilliant speakers that we're presenting today. So I'm really looking forward to an exciting conversation with my panel. I know that you come with wealth of knowledge, and I believe that what will be shared today is going to help a lot of organizations that are about to embark on their AI strategy, but they're not sure how best to go about it. So the topic of today is developing a strategic framework for AI implementation. Before we jump into it, I'd like to give everyone an opportunity to introduce themselves briefly, who they are, and then we can go into the panel discussion. Thank you. I think I'm just going to start with Kgosi Molefe, and the rest of the team can follow. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Thanks. I'm Kgosi Molefe. As you can see, so I'm a resilience engineer, ring specialist at Standard Bank. I think I got onto the bandwagon of artificial intelligence and automation when I was still in my Accenture days. I think I was one of their first cohorts to actually start there. I think the biggest selling point at that time was either analytics or automation. So I actually got onto that bandwagon, and I'm like, here's something that's out of service management, which I was tired of. Then I was like, oh, okay. But it kind of like brought me back into it to do new things in terms of utilizing the data and how you can really auto remediate things. So I've been in the industry for about close to 15 years. I'm still commencing my studies to take on another master's degree in IT so that I can actually do it in AI with UCT. And I'm doing some quite interesting stuff, especially in the banking space, because that's where I was able to apply a whole lot of my capability, even in my consulting days, is that there was more of the banking space was the ones that was able to actually get onto the bandwagon of automation and do a whole lot of processing. And then from there, process automation. And then from there on, we started looking at how we can take things from an end-to-end value chain and how we can implement that, and I think at the time it was more looking at the customers rather than fixing things internally. We are so driven to make sure that our profits rise, but we are not driven to utilize the technology to actually correct what is happening internally with us, because we feel that our foundation is okay and let's just renovate the house, whereas we don't understand that let us start from the ground up and work ourselves up. So that's me in a nutshell, things that I've done and experiences I've got.
Great. Kgosi, thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to a deep dive, especially with regards to the experiences that you've had in terms of the journey of AI. From Kgosi, I'd like Dr. Mark Nasila to please kindly give us your brief introduction.
Oh.
You're on mute. I don't think we can hear you properly.
I think it could be a problem with his speaker on the mic on his side.
We still can't. Perhaps you need to check if your speaker is fine. While you are checking, I'm going to ask Anne to introduce herself, and you can just give me thumbs up once everything is working on your side, Dr. Mark. Hi, Anne, welcome. Thank you.
Hi, Nomsa. Thanks for having me here today. So I am the managing director of a company called Torch Solutioneers. Torch Solutioneers is a consulting company, and we consult on digital transformation and strategy. We look both from the sort of customer experience side. So my preferred methodology is to ask the customer ask the client what experience they want their customer to have, and then design around a digital transformation strategy around that then takes into account the sort of customer-centric culture that they were looking to build within the organization as well. So I believe digital transformation is a double-sided sword. You've got the strategy part, but you've also got the culture part, and you need to make sure that those things align well. It's no good enabling an organization when you haven't actually enabled the people to be able to work in this new way that you want them to work in. So that's me in a nutshell. Very much like Kgosi, I escaped service management as well. And I'm very excited not to be designing SLAs and things like that. And the last 3 years, we decided to start Solutioneers because we realized that sort of telecommunications was waning in terms of the variety it offered my Enia Type 7, and I needed to find some more exciting things to do. And the world of the fourth industrial revolution is full of variety and full of new. But as Nomsa, I think you mentioned earlier in your talk, we're not doing it very well in South Africa. And so there's opportunity to guide companies through this journey, and that's my interest.
Thank you very much, and I really appreciate your introduction, and I am really looking forward to us chatting about the customer experience because as far as I'm concerned, that could either make a project succeed or fail. So I'm looking forward to us delving much into that. Hi, Johan. Welcome. I'm really inspired by the work that you do and the teachings that you are continuously, putting out there. If you can give us your introduction as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Hi, Nomsa. Good to see you again. Johan Steyn. My day job until the end of June is PwC, where I am leading the smart automation, the RPA and intelligent automation practice. But I've decided to pivot. So I'm going to go into a career of academia where I'll work for an international university as an adjunct professor in their MBA program. I'm also a research fellow at Stellenbosch University in computational thinking. And then I write weekly for Business Day. So on Wednesdays, you'll see my article. I don't know how I got it right. I've this week published my 47th consecutive article. Every week I think, what the hell am I going to write about next? And then something comes up. And I write for Sunday Times and Brainstorm and others. But what drives me is the societal impact, the people impact of this technology. My son is 8 years old. I always wonder when he's 35 or 40 and I'm still around, will he say, Dad, you and your generation regulated this technology, or you didn't? And look at the dystopia we are in now. So it's an important topic for me. I'm not the tech itself is exciting, but what it's going to do to humans, to our children, to our future, what it can do to the future of people in our own beloved country. That's really what drives me. So I'm excited to be part of this conversation, Nomsa. Thank you.
Thank you, Johan. That is quite profound if you think about it, because at the end of the day, we need to be cognizant of the impact tech has on humanity, and we believe that it should be augmenting, it should be helping humanity to do better. And obviously, there can be many negativities around that, and depending on who has the tool, and how do they use that particular tool. So we're continuously learning from you, and I'm looking forward to us engaging further. Dr. Mark, welcome back. Let's test again.
It could be a browser setting, especially in Chrome, a microphone blockage. Sounds like a drain blockage, but you know what I mean. Maybe try a different browser, perhaps.
Yeah, perhaps you may try a different browser and see if it will help. Okay, great. I think if we can maybe just tackle our first question with regards to the topic that we are talking about. How should business strategize the development and implementation of AI? And if we can start with you, Kgosi, especially with the extensive experience that you have, what have you seen that worked, and what are the pitfalls that businesses need to avoid when they're doing this?
Okay, so I think that the first thing I would like to indicate there is the pitfall. Don't rush it, right? Don't try to yield benefits. I keep when I was still doing sales for AI and automation, I used to say that this is not a medical pill. This is not a Viagra. So excuse the Viagra part, but I used to say that just to get it into people's mind, that it does not mean that it's basically gonna happen, just like that. I used to say to people, you need to be cognizant of the fact that if you're gonna do an AI strategy, right, it all starts with data. Understand the data that you've got, because AI is data driven, right? It's either from data that comes from databases, or it is knowledge data driven. And when you talk about knowledge data driven, you talk about the processes that are within an organization, and understand that. Okay. And also the institutional memory that you need to tap in, either in the form of interviews or surveys, to actually understand your landscape. That will give you an indication by using either capability maturity models, or utilizing whatever type of way that you're going to model what the answers how can I say, the landscape of what you're trying to solve. Know what is it that you're trying to solve for, and not preempt what you're trying to solve for. What a lot of things that consulting firms had sold was implementation, right? They never really sold ideation, okay? To think about where do you want to go and actually start architecting a strategy. And that's why you find a whole lot of digital transformation projects are failing. It's because they never had a starting point. They just had an implementation point. If you don't know what you don't know, you can't implement that. And the best thing to do is to start somewhere. Start with ideation. Understand and articulate the problems that you have in your organization. Jot them down and make sure that they all, we speak about the simple, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. Make it like that. I always say that you've got five fingers that create your hand, right? And you can only do this. Don't take more than you can grab with your hand. Okay. And by doing that, it means that you are in control. You can still hold it, right? You can hold it either from a strategy perspective, from an implementation perspective, and also from a measurability perspective, because you know what is it that you're measuring. Now, if you're going to go out where, and I saw people back in the days when the robotics days, they were always happy that they have implemented 110 processes. And I was like, whoopee, you've implemented 110 processes. But how many of those processes are scaling to what the organization needs it to scale to? How many of those processes are actually processes that you can actually see on the balance sheet of a company? Because they've put in so much money for that to be automated. But how is it actually sufficing the whole value chain? How have you brought everything together to bring about simplification? You understand? Things like that are people are not thinking about in the beginning. But if you take as only a couple of things that you're doing that you can hold in control, you're able to start asking the right questions. Is it going to work for this? Is it going to make us see this? And what is the net value? And how can we really make it tangible? Those are the things that people need to think about. People creating chatbots for the sake of creating chatbots. Why did you create the chatbot in the first place? Did you want it to be FAQ? Did you want it to trigger a sales process? Did you want it to trigger an ITSM process? You know, those type of things. Those are questions that you need to put into your mind in terms of how do you bring that transformational AI into the business to make sure that it actually goes to a value chain that goes either into a department. If it doesn't go into a department, either it goes into a sales translation, or it goes into something that helps you to think faster and do things that are strategic. That's it.
Thank you very much. That's a mouthful. And you've touched so many key things, you know, around the implementation. And the biggest thing that is coming out for me is the planning before it and not rushing it. Because 9 out of 10, I think it also needs to come from, why are we buying this technology? Did we have an amazing salesperson that came in and we were excited, and now we embark on this technology without thinking and looking at the needs of the business and also what problems we're trying to solve? Thank you very much for that. I think, Anne, I'd like you to come in from this perspective and touch on the customer experience perspective in terms of the implementation and how can that be aligned as a strategy to achieve AI projects.
Yeah, thanks, Nomsa. So, I mean, I 100% agree with Kgosi. It's really important to know what your end goal is that you're trying to achieve, and have an idea of how you're going to measure the success of your implementation. So, a lot of people want to measure success with return of investment, and it's usually the financial metrics that have to get signed off, and that's how we think we're going to measure success. And that is how we measure success at the end. But during implementation, these secondary metrics start to creep in. And so all of a sudden we realize that we haven't quite got the app right, or the customer's experience is not quite what we wanted it to be. So we make tweaks and we make changes, and then we start to measure on how many customers are adopting the app, how many customers are using the app, how many return visits do we have, and so we have a different metric there. So when it comes to implementation and customer experience, you're really looking for, is the customer downloading whatever it is, or is the customer engaging with this platform, or is the customer uploading their documents to our new document vision platform that's helping us to input their data into the CRM? Are they actually using this thing that we've given them to use? And if not, how can we encourage adoption, or how can we change it so that it becomes easier for the customer to follow the new process and not the old process that they used to be following? And so when I define a strategy for digital transformation, when a customer comes to me and says, we know we need to digitally transform, or we know we need to implement we need to take our journey to the next level. Our customer journey is old, our customer experience is behind. How do we do this? The first thing I start with is the customer journey, and we map out every single touch point in that customer's journey, and we test it. We test it against what I like to call the 3 C's. And the first C is it context sensitive? So in that customer's context, does it make sense for them, or is it somewhat off-putting, or is it rude? So for example, if I have a customer, if I'm enabling a bot to talk to my customer after hours, that doesn't necessarily mean that the customer wants to talk to a human after hours. So let's make sure the context of the touch point is sensitive. The second thing we want to measure each touch point against is for a cohesive brand identity. So does the bot sound like you? Is it using your type of language? Is it on brand? Is it on message? So that needs to be consistent across every single touch point. And then the last one is the consistent experience. So is the experience consistent across every single touch point? So is the customer able to have a good experience, touch point 1 to 10, and then touch point 11, it wasn't so good because you didn't get back to me, or the bot took 20 minutes to respond rather than the 2 minutes that I had come to anticipate. So those are the measurements that we take, and at each of the measurements we say, right, how could we elevate the experience? what can we do with service design and what can we do with digital transformation in service design and in customer experience. And so when you implement, you then measure whether or not the experience has improved, again, against those 3 C's. So that's, for me, how we come up with the strategy, and then also how we measure the successful implementation once we've put that strategy in. And, as Kgosi was saying, you've got one hand, only take as much as you can manage. We start with quick wins, things that are going to show impact fast, but also things that are going to help you with your change management journey internally, because you need to build that coalition of support. So if you can show quick wins and change, it might not be the first thing on the journey, you might be changing something later in the journey, but if it shows impact and you can build a coalition of support, then you get more support in terms of moving people through this digital transformation strategy. And that helps with your change management process. So we look for quick wins. We then look for things that are going to have a high impact and delivered over a relatively short period of time. Again, helps with your change management journey. And then you have your high impact things that are going to be delivered over sort of what may be called your third horizon. Longer period of time, maybe 3 to 5 years. It's going to cost a bit. You're going to need to put a lot of resource behind it, but it's going to make a phenomenal change to the customer and also to your organization. And that's why it's called a transformation, because it doesn't just transform this little piece over here. It transforms the whole organization and your customer experience.
Wow, that is absolutely amazing. And you touched on quite important aspects of it. When you're talking about the experience that a customer is having with the bot and the considerations that you are putting in mind, I believe that if we consider all these things, it is definitely eliminating failure and also ensuring that everyone is on the same page in terms of the journey that we need to walk in order of implementing a AI strategy. Johan, Annie is talking about the customer experience in this entire journey. How do we bring in the social and human element to it? Because it's very clear that we should not be one-sided when we are embarking on a journey like this. There's so many things that we have to consider, and I think that you can help us in terms of that aspect. How do we then consider social cohesiveness of what we build in terms of implementations?
Nomsa, thank you. Of course, and have said so much. That's the problem when you need the third speaker, like taking the wind out of my sails, but great answers. I often tell clients, tongue in cheek, that you cannot automate stupidity. They don't like to hear that, but that's what they try and do, in my opinion. In the last 4 years, every client meeting that started with, we want to use AI, none of those resulted in an AI implementation fixing their problems. Because it's things that, like, people don't understand their jobs. The culture is toxic. Our processes are broken. We don't understand our customers. And it's often a KPI, a mandate from the top. By the end of this year, you have to be 50% AI'd in your business unit, whatever that means. Otherwise, you're not going to earn your bonus. So I often start a meeting with people will say, we want to use AI. And I'll say, to do what? And that's when the meeting becomes a little awkward. Colleagues are looking around at each other and say, but we've been tasked to AI. The technology is not as smart as we think it is yet. It is rapidly increasing. The human element is just from an ethical point of view, but also from a practical point of view, something that I try and drive with my customers. So to use AI and data responsibly, not only your so-called back office operations, your own staff, take your people on the journey with you, but also your customers. I had this experience a little while ago where my fiber line was down. And I live near a hospital. I'm privileged in that I almost never have load shedding. So I can give you my address, and for 1,000 Rand a day, you can all come and work in my house. Maybe I should make it 5,000 Rand. But so I never have issues with fiber or electricity. But for me, when the fiber line is down or the your electricity is down, it's like walking to your car in the morning to go to the office and you realize that the tires are flat, the car's broken. I mean, you can't work, especially working from home. This internet service provider only had a WhatsApp chatbot, no telephone number. And I've never had to contact them because I've never had issues, okay? So, and then I think, and you alluded to the bot taking 20 minutes to respond. So in this case, it was 8 minutes. Okay, about 16 because it's me talking to the bot, wait 8 minutes, and then the bot would respond 8 minutes. And it took me 3 hours to solve this problem. And eventually they put me through to a call center, a contact center agent. After providing, firstly, they didn't have my info. They didn't know where I existed or where I lived, rather. So they couldn't say if there was an outage in my area. And I'm thinking, you've got all this data on me already. But in any case, after babysitting this bot for 3 hours, I'm put through to this human. And I feel sorry for contact center agents. That's not a job I'd love to do, because this contact center agent had no history or no idea or no context on the 3 hours of interaction with the bot. So I had to answer the same questions again. So just a bit of a story, but I think it should be a human-led initiative. AI or any technological thing we try and do, we should take people on the journey with us. The importance of people, again, from an ethical and a philosophical point of view, not just customers, but our own staff. That's important. The whole idea of job displacements through automation in South Africa in particular, where on average a wage earner would look after 6 or 7 extended family members. So to say we're going to get rid of 100 people through automation will impact 1,000 people, you know. But how do you balance it with, we've got targets and shareholder kind of pressure, and if we can make a 0.1% more profit, then everyone will be happy. So, but and I hope after all that waffling, I've kind of answered the question, Nomsa and team. But people first, always, always, always. Your staff and your customers. And AI is very rarely the answer to most of the problems that businesses are struggling with all over the world. I hope that helps.
It does quite a lot. Thank you very much for that. And I think the biggest thing that you are saying is that we need to be putting our people first in terms of the implementation. And again, I think as we are conversing, it goes back into the planning. I've seen in my journey that I would perhaps pitch to a client, and the first thing that the technology require is you need to think about what you want to achieve. You need to literally put it down in a process, because the implementation of AI or any other technology for that matter, it is in the planning, in the deciding what you want to do. How do you want it to look like? By the time the technology comes and it is implemented, that is quite short, but I think what I'm hearing is that we need to be able to spend time to consider all these elements, consider people, consider what are we trying to solve, and let's ensure that whatever solutions or AI that we bring in an environment is customer centric, and it gives a great customer experience. Now, how do we define the success measure of the AI implementation? And I know that you have highlighted some of what I wanted to ask you. I mean, you guys, with your opening, you've answered all my questions. Now I don't know what to ask you. Joking. So, Kgosi, if you can come in terms of how do we define or how do we measure the success of the AI implementation?
Ooh, yeah, the big old question of how do we measure it? How do I know it works? How do you know it works? All I'm saying that how would you know that it basically work is that you can only know that it works on the utilization of what you've implemented, right? And I think most tools or technologies that you utilize are now coming either with a dashboard that actually shows to that, or you can utilize either different how can I put it, other application monitoring solutions that are there to look at it. For example, we from a mobile perspective, right? We've done something. We've utilized a couple of tools, right? And I'm speaking about a real life use case right now, to see how many people are actually utilizing our Standard Bank mobile app. How many people are really utilizing that to transact, as compared to how many people are opening up their laptop, coming through the internet and utilizing that, or how many people are still going to the bank? As you know, that we were the first bank to say that, you know what, we are going to do a forced change management. We're going to close a whole lot of our branches, and we're going to start making people become more. How can I say? More active in utilizing their smartphones, right? And we started doing calculations on that. Now you start knowing that every change that you're putting in, every implementation or version that you release of anything that could have an AI model in it, how is it being utilized? That's how you need to measure. You need to look at how do you integrate it into another tool. You will never measure it within the tool, and I'll tell you why you'll never measure it in the tool. And a whole lot of OEMs will kill me here. Is that if I create a solution and I say my solution is super great, I want to keep it super great. I don't want you to come and tell me my solution to come and tell you as a customer that I'm not performing a certain function. I'd say, yeah, it's doing its work, but it's up to you to actually integrate it, either from using microservices or an API to integrate the communication between the two to see how the utilization of that happens. For example, how many people, when they go into your website and you've got a chatbot there, how many of them are utilizing the chat box in order for us to offer them new services? How many of them are asking the questions as opposed to people being calling in? And if the chatbot is utilized quite a lot, then you know that you obviously need to now reduce the number of people you have into your contact center, because they've got another mode of communicating with you to do that. I mean, one of the examples that Johan spoke about, and I think that whole use case was more about testing the theory of, do we really need a phone number for people to call us, or do we have to take our first level of support from a technology perspective, and then our second level of support, then it can actually be where we direct you directly to our phone lines, so that's how you measure certain things to see what's the either the response time, the turnaround time in doing that, or what is the utilization. It depends on the metric that you create. Then you would know if it's successful or not. That's how you'd measure success. It depends on it's metric driven.
In a sense, to say which metrics have you put out for yourself as a company. And would you like to come in from your perspective in defining the success measurement ahead of the implementation?
Yeah, sure. So I did a little bit of research on this last year, actually. And I was trying to see whether or not so you get different types of digital transformation. And so you get digital transfer, and the type is determined by what the organization is hoping to achieve at the end of that transformation. So, I mean, the first one you have is an organizational digital transformation. So we are digitally transforming. We are going to change the way that our organization is structured. So, what Kgosi has mentioned, where Standard Bank closed a whole lot of branches and they moved their customers into an online interaction. That's an organizational transformation. You're sort of changing structure, you're changing the way that you're interacting with your customers. Then you get a new business model digital transformation. So this is where you've come up with a great new way to make money, and it's digital, and you open up this digital business and you go through a transformation to enable that. Then you get a customer-oriented digital transformation. So this is where you go through a customer-oriented transformation because you want to change up the experience for the customer, and you do it because of customer. You don't do it because of efficiency gains. And then you get the last one is the business process efficiency digital transformation. So you have those 4 types. So the research that I did last year looked into, do we measure success the same way across all of those different types of digital transformation, or do we focus on different things? And what I found was, for all but one of them, we pretty much measure it the same way. So for organizational digital transformation, for new business model, and for business process efficiency digital transformations, we're pretty much starting off with our financial metrics being the primary metric. And then we want innovation metrics. So has this opened up new skills internally? Has it opened up new jobs, innovation, new ways of thinking, innovation metrics? And then your typical information systems metrics. Does the platform work? What is the uptime? Those lovely IT metrics. They're important. The only one that was different was the customer-oriented digital transformation. And this is where stakeholders were more strongly considered and the customer was more strongly considered. And so when you look at how to measure the success of a digital transformation, you need to know what type of transformation you're doing. And then you can align your metrics towards the type of transformation. And you can put metrics in place. And it's important to acknowledge that metrics will emerge during the project. Things that you didn't know were going to be that important all of a sudden become really, really important. And you end up adding to the list. So as you go, it's a learning journey. Be flexible to add those metrics in. At the end of the day, the board is going to be looking for the return on capital invested. And you're going to have to make those promises at the beginning, and you're going to have to show them at the end. The other thing that I need to say about taking measurements is you need to know how you're going to take those measurements at the beginning. And you need to take measurements. And some of these things need to be measured for 3 or even 5 years. And in a project like, especially like Kgosi, I love that one that you mentioned, the Standard Bank project where you close branches and move people onto the internet, but then you move people onto apps, and now the internet has evolved and the apps have evolved, and so that project never really stopped. It just carried on going and snowballed and will continue to do so forever as customers demand different ways and new ways to interact with you. And so it's difficult to say, well, that initial project saved us this many billions of rands because it's just got the longest tail ever. So, be realistic about that, because then these things don't just become digital transformation projects. They become, a new way of life and a new way of doing business for the bank.
It is indeed a new way of doing business with the bank, or a new way of life, because I think what then happens is the continuous improvement, because there's a lot of feedback that you continuously get when you are transforming an organization. And I think what I like about what you are sharing, and is there's different types of transformation, which are not necessarily always considered by the businesses. Talking of customer experience, I mean, Rowan is saying that smartphones are the worst if you have big fingers. So in our development, we really have to be considerate of the people that are going to be using our technology. Johan, earlier you spoke about, you literally gave us a peek in the future to say, when you're looking at your son and you think about what we are doing right now with technology, how is it going to impact them in the future? So my question is, what are the issues that we need to consider in AI strategy?
Just to make sure I understand, you mean from a societal impact point of view, our future of our children, or are you more business focused, Nomsa?
In fact, a bit of both, because obviously from the societal aspect, these children or the future generations, they will be running businesses. And obviously the decisions that are being made right now, they will be impacting them in the future. So if you can look at the bit of both, if you don't mind.
Easy peasy question. Thank you very much. No, so look, a lot of our children already have a digital footprint. And yes, we have a massive digital divide in our own country. I often say tongue in cheek that we're still in the second industrial revolution, trying to keep the lights on and electricity supply, which was the issue in the second industrial revolution. We're trying to aim for the fourth, but we've got some fundamental problems, obviously, that we need to fix in our country. So there are millions of children who we can't even relate the whole idea of digital footprint and using apps and iPads and stuff, because they barely have food to eat. We should never underestimate that. It's also our own biases based on how we think the world is very much the way like we experience it. But a lot of our children who are using mobile phones or apps or the like, I've got a Google Home device, and my son, who's 8, kind of cheats in his homework by asking Google for answers to his questions. I'm not too worried about it because he needs to learn how to ask the internet for these things, But imagine the privacy concerns of, I mean, most of us here have only had a digital footprint for, say, 20 years or so. But my son in 30 years will have had a multi-decade digital footprint. The other day, for interest's sake, I was now listening to him speaking to the specific app that we have that's teaching him math, asking questions. And suddenly the AI asked him, because they were talking about building a house in the right areas, engineering skills. And suddenly the app asked him, "What is your address?" And I jumped over my table to stop this because that is a massive problem. And we've seen in the lockdown period how the activities, for instance, of sexual predators have increased. I read somewhere 300%. So to teach our children how to not shy away from this technology, to really use it, but to do it responsibly and smartly, so that's important. If we think of brain implants, brain computer interface technology, which is a reality already, if we think of 3D printed body parts, if we think of custom designed babies, again, this is what we're going to face in the next 5 to 10 years. Our children are going into a future which we could never have imagined. So we have to equip them from an ethical, but also from a philosophical point of view, how to deal with these things as it comes their way. From a business point of view, and again, and I like what both the other panelists said, the trick is what do we measure and how do we measure it, So, and the board is going to, and you're so right, the board is going to look at the numbers, and what they're going to report on the JSE. The rest is really just BS to a large extent, in my experience. But things like, have we stopped or decreased customer churn? Is customer satisfaction up? Is the satisfaction of our own people who work for us, has that increased because of these technologies? Have we uncovered star performers through our training initiatives and so forth? The big thing that AI technology should do is give us answers to questions we have not asked it. Okay, so BI and those kind of things will give us the dashboards, but there's patterns in the data of our customers or in our back office operations that we never thought of asking. But it could be revolutionary in how there could be, for instance, we would say, so I'm a mobile provider. How many of our customers are females from this specific demographic between the ages of 18 and 35? Of course, the data should be able to tell that. But what are those specific customers looking for if we look at how they use the applications geospatially, where they're using their cell phones, and so forth? I did a piece of work with a mobile phone provider recently where we looked at a data monetization initiative. And one use case is to try and on-sell products for new mothers, baby care kind of products and the like. And this is where behavioral psychology comes in, because the data in itself tells one story, but what does it say about the behavior of that consumer? And what we discovered is, and again, this is not always 100% correct, but females between the ages of 18 and 35, who are considered, and again, I'm a guy here speaking, what the hell do I know? But anyways, I'm going to tell you the story, who are considered the typical childbearing age for many women. Women of this mobile provider in that age group who suddenly started using their mobile phone much later at night, much earlier in the morning, intermittently during the evening, there's a chance that there's a new baby in the house. Now, that is just one data point. There's many others, So, but how are people behaving? And that's, I think, the measurement. And maybe I'll end with this. Your shareholders and your board will look for quick wins. And quick wins are important. That by the next year that we announce our results, it should be 5% up. But some of these initiatives will take multi-years to really come to fruition. And if you have a leadership in the organization that's not allowing this technology and this massive organizational change to happen in the right way over time, it is going to fail. And most CEOs and senior executives are there for a year or two to make their massive bonuses and then they're gone. And this is one of the biggest problems, not allowing it the right kind of time to fruition.
Nomsa, can I jump in? I just want to add to
Yes.
something that Johan was saying about his child. So I have a neurodiverse child, and she's 9 and she's not yet able to read. And she is able to get her homework done at grade 3 level because she uses tools, speech to text conversion. And I mean, that is massive. She can get her grade 3 without being able, she's severely dyslexic, without being able to read, she will be able to get her grade 3 and a grade 4 and a grade 5. And so what we're seeing is these tools now need to come into the classroom because they're at home and they're allowed to use them at home to do their homework. But now these tools need to come into the classroom. We need to start, instead of having a scribe or a reader for kids who battle with reading and writing, we could allow them to do this with speech to text technology. And so I think that AI actually promotes inclusion, not just from a neurodiversity perspective, but also from a gender-based perspective. Across the board, it's actually bringing down barriers. It's not putting barriers up.
That's beautiful, and thank you very much for that input. And that is obviously another way that we should be looking at it, to say actually it promotes inclusion, in all elements or all aspects of life and business. And closing, because I see that we're running out of time, Kgosi, tell me, what is it that companies or organizations that are about to embark on AI project, what is it that they need to stop? If there's anything that they need to stop, what would that be?
Oh no, that's very simple. Stop oppressing the CIO, because the CIO of today is the CEO of tomorrow. That's all I'm saying. Stop. You're asking somebody to drive something. Let them drive it. Let them articulate it to you. Now, the
Yes,
role of
yes,
now
yes.
CEOs are trying to be CIOs, whereas CIOs are now being overshadowed by the CEOs or CFOs, even in worst cases.
Yes,
They
yes.
can't really move. Give your CIO the budget, Mr.
Thank
CFO.
you very much. I think CEOs and CFOs are listening. Johan, what should we do more when it comes to the embarking on the journey?
The technology department and the technology people play an incredibly important role. Take them out of the driving seat. Stop doing that. Let business drive this. Okay, let the IT people, the smart propellerhead people, no disrespect anyone, because I'm not a propellerhead. I'm actually stupider than most people think, but it helps me as well. Don't let the techies drive this, because they're going to jump in with AWS, Azure. They're going to bring all kinds of tools and stuff, and we don't even know what we're doing yet. Let the business should drive it. Now, the challenge here is that a lot of most business leaders, about 70% globally, statistics show, have no clue about how this technology works. You don't have to become a software engineer or a machine learning expert, but know enough about this technology, and especially how it's going to impact your team and your organization and the way you interact with your customers, so that the IT guys don't pull the wool over your eyes, so to speak. Because don't let the IT guys and girls, sorry guys, there's a lot of girls in IT too, and there should be more.
Yes,
But the
please.
business decision makers should know enough so that the IT people can support them, I would say. And then, yeah, Kgosi, you're right. Just
Interesting
to
now.
end off quickly, I'm actually doing work with the university locally, because in the past, a lot of your CEOs were typically your chartered accountants. The trend in the future is that future CEOs will be technologists. The challenge they have is they don't always have the business acumen and understanding. But yeah, so good point there. Anyway, that's me.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. This is quite interesting. And tell me, what is it that we need to change in closing?
Yeah, I think we need to change our perspective and start with the end in mind. Know what the outcome is that you're trying to achieve, and then work backwards. So I would say start with the end in mind, but make sure that there's somebody in the room at every strategy session who's representing your customer and another person who's representing your employee, and they get to speak up when you're making decisions that are going to impact either of those two most important stakeholders.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I've learned so much out of this session, and I know that our audiences as well, there's so much that they've learned out of it. We've taken so much in terms of the impact that these AI projects do. I'll take it back to Zenzele. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Nomsa, for that wonderful discussion. Thank you, Kgosi, Johan, and Anne as well. We really appreciate. I think it's a very, very important discussion there. We have indeed learned a lot. And also, I'd like to thank all the speakers who presented earlier. We really appreciate the insights shared. We will take the advices and hopefully implement it or implement them in our organizations. Thank you so much. I would like also to thank the attendees who have been very supportive, I would say, since we started these AI conferences. I see a lot of very familiar faces who have been very supportive in our events, and we very grateful indeed. Thank you so much. We will share the recordings if you want to go through all these sessions. You will do that at the comfort of your home at your own time. Thank you so much. We will share more information about our other AI related events in the year. Hopefully that I pray that our next event be an in-person, physical one. Now, Dr. Mark couldn't participate. Sometimes the technology fails us. So hopefully that, our next one will be physical. And thank you so much. We try by all means to share insights into these technologies. We've got our weekly interviews that we do with Johan Steyn. Johan is in the intersection of academia and business, so he contributes also very well here on ML Africa, and we do all those weekly interviews. So if you can, subscribe and learn more, just share the link on chat. So if you can just subscribe to the to hear about this AI related stuff. If you also want to share some insights, please let us know. We will interview you, and we hear from your perspective how you using AI or how you're seeing this technology from your side of things or from your world. Thank you so much. We really appreciate, and I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and great day. Those who are also in different time zones as well. Thank you so much. This comes to the
Thank you
end of
so
our
much.
program. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you. Bye bye. Cheers.
Cheers.